Sara Davies and I'm from Crafter's Companion, and in this tutorial I want to show you how to make a really traditional Christmas card. And for me, nothing is more traditional and Christmassy than poinsettias. I always remember my grandma would buy me a poinsettia every year to keep in the house. It was our family thing for Christmas. So I've designed a fabulous poinsettia die in the Festive Wonder collection that we've got. So I'm going to show you how to create this design. We're also going to use the Season's Greetings die cut, and we're going to use one of the beautiful embossed backgrounds. So I put the card to one side and we start off with our actual die cutting. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Season's Greetings, and because it's such an intricate die, on that part of the card I'm going to apply a little bit of Stick It so that I can then peel off and use it as a sticker on the background. Now this is the Stick It product that I'm talking about, and what we need to do is just cut a piece of this which is adequate size for the die to fit on. So I'm going to cut that there. And you don't need to use too much, so that will always come in handy for another project. And then what we do is we peel the backing off, and that's just going to stick onto the back of the card. So in the bottom right hand corner I'm sticking that on. So I know now that as long as I stick that Season's Greetings stamp die cut over where the Stick It is going to be like a sticker. So you'll see exactly what I mean when we do it. So I'm going to cut that on the bottom corner. Now the poinsettia die comes in a number of pieces. So you've got the large piece, you've got the actual leaf, you've got the medium piece and the small piece. And you also get included with this some lovely little furry extras, as they are, that are just going to give you little embellishments. So make the sandwich up, and I'm using the cut and boss machine, so I've made the sandwich up as per the thin metal die requirement for the cut and boss, and then I'm just offering it into the mouth of the machine. Now these dies aren't designed to work specifically with the cut and boss. They will work with any of the die cutting and embossing machines that are out there on the market. What you might find is, because the dies are very detailed, they might not cut perfectly the first time you pass them through your machine. So you might need to pass them through a couple of times, or perhaps add an extra little shim in. So I've done my die cutting there. And if I lift that out, what we should find is, you can see there they've cut the outside shapes here, and we've cut the Season's Greetings. So I'm just going to cut off the Season's Greetings, because we don't need to emboss the Season's Greetings. However, I do want to emboss. All of this is embossed detail on these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the magnetic mat and add in my rubber embossing mat now. And we're going to send them through the machine another time to perfectly emboss it. Now while that's embossing, let me show you what I meant about the Stick It. Because if we lift this off here, you can see actually some of the Stick It is releasing off the back as we lift it out, and these panels will just pop out of the centre, the ones that you don't want. So you can see I'm lifting out all of the pieces that I don't want out of that die, and then what is left in there is a perfect die cut that is actually self-adhesive. So when we come to lift this out and stick this on the card, we know that that's in there ready and self-adhesive. But I don't need it just yet. What I am going to do is show you how we can make our poinsettia nice and red. So if I show you the difference now. So if you look at the back of all of these dies, can you see now, you can see where the embossed detail has really been pushed through to the centre of the card there. So if I lift all of these dies out, even the really, really intricate dies here, I mean, look at this. If you imagine cutting these out by hand, it would take forever. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Tim Holtz Distress Ink, the barn door, and just pick a little bit of distress ink up onto my cut and dry foam, and then just ink through where we've got all of that embossing detail. And if I show you what happens then, if we do that while your die is still in place, it only adds ink onto the embossing detail. So I'll show you that again on some of the smaller ones. A little bit of ink, and we just ink through the die. And I just want it on the leaves of the poinsettia. And then when they pop out, you've got the perfect elements. Now, you actually need to die cut them quite a lot of times. So I've got a little stack here of die cuts that I've done. So there's my large outer one. I've got a couple of lovely veiny leaves there. And then my smaller ones to go on the inside. And then you've got even smaller ones to go on the inside, depending on how you want to layer it up. Then these little pieces, very, very Christmassy. They look lovely done in shades of green. They're just going to add a little bit of extra texture around the card. So there's all my base design, my central topper piece ready to make up. What we need to do is get the base design ready. So for that, I'm going to use the fabulous embossing folder background that we've got. And I'm actually going to emboss the card direct. So what I've done is I've taken a 6x6 card, and you'll find that you'll be able to emboss perfectly onto the front of the card. Now what I'm doing is I'm looking through the embossing folder so I can see exactly where I want the embossed detail to happen. Again, because I'm using the cut and emboss machine, I'm going to make my sandwich up perfect for that, which is you sandwich your embossing panel. So I've just knocked that a little bit. That is going to emboss straight over the front there, and that embossing panel is going to sit in between the two A plates, and we're just going to pass that through the machine. Just making sure I've just knocked it a tiny little bit more. Do you see, it's worth just taking your time and getting it perfectly right. There we go. And then the top plate just sits on. Now again, just like the dies, all of the embossing folders are universal. They're going to work with all of your different brands of die cutting machines that are out there on the market. You just need to look up what the sandwich platform combination is for embossing folders. Now, you can hear the difference there when it's taken through the embossing folder. So when I lift this off, you can see we've got that beautiful embossed detail, but it doesn't show up very much. And this is where I'm going to use the distress ink again. So I'm just going to put down a mat so that we don't get ink all over our surface. I'm just picking up a little bit of colour onto the cut and dry foam, tapping off the excess, and then just rubbing it around. And look what happens when you rub it over the embossed detail. It really does just show that embossed detail up beautifully well. Okay, so I can add that around there. Make sure you fold your card over because you don't want the distress ink on the back. You want a perfect white back. So we're just adding that colour around the outside. And then what we're going to do is, because we're going to use this as a frame, we're going to use a cutting knife and just cut. You can see that you've got that frame border. We're just going to cut around the inside of that frame border like this. So I'm just doing it with real precision. Now you don't need to see me sitting cutting a frame. You can see exactly how that is just being cut there. I've got one here that I've already done the cutting out on. So you can see we've just cut right round the inside of that frame. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a piece of the beautiful pattern cardstock that we've got from the 12x12 paper pad in this collection. And I'm going to stick it over the back so that you can see we can have a frame with the red flowers on the inside as well. So just using the super strong tape pens that we have in our collection. And notice that these tape pens will go around corners as well. So make sure you get it right round the aperture here. It is really, really super sticky. And then that is just going to stick inside my card like that. Okay. So you can see that there's our base card ready to design. I'm just going to burnish along that top crease. Now, first thing I'm going to do is add the season's greetings on. So can you remember I said it's all ready now as like a sticker? Again, I'm just going to pop out some of these central pieces that aren't meant to be in there. And then we can just release that sticker and just take your time, because it is such a detailed die. You don't want to damage the die cut when you're releasing it out of the die base. And it really is just a case of, you know, take care when you're doing it. So there's my seasons part released, and then the greetings will just follow straight afterwards. And you can actually cut these dies up and just use the seasons or just use the greetings. So I know we've also got Merry Christmas in this range. You could mix and match and have Christmas greetings, for example. And because it's got that stick it on, it's already starting to stick to my fingers. Just taking out the extra bits there. And the more you handle it, the more you'll use the stickiness. So just be very careful with it. And I'm going to position that over the top corner. So there's my season's greetings. You can see where I have handled it there, it has lost some of its sticky. So just be very, very careful. But look at the difference that stick it makes. You can't see a single piece of adhesive on that. Yet that is just stuck down absolutely perfectly. And that's what stick it's all about. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my large poinsettia. Now, all of these dies are designed to be shaped. So you'll see they'll just shape around your fingers. Now, too much shaping and you'll end up with a very, very, very deep card. And you don't necessarily want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off, and you do need 3D glue gel for this. I'm going to start off with just a circle globule of 3D glue gel, and I'm going to start off by positioning my large poinsettia. So I like to use 5 points in my poinsettia. It's completely up to you, but this was primarily designed to work with 5. And the reason that the glue gel is so important is because, can you see I'm just pushing these into the glue gel and manoeuvring it around. Now I've gone a little bit too low on the card there, so I just use that glue gel to position them all back up. Because what you don't want is your card not to be able to stand up. So can you see we must remain flat along the base. So there's the 5 points of my poinsettia, and they will all just push in one at a time into the other. Can you see? And they just form a circle in the centre. Now once you've got the base one done, you would then put another globule in the centre, and we're going to do the same thing with the middle ones. So again, they're all shaping, and the middle ones are going to come in between the outer ones. So just one at a time. Every time I'm just shaping it around my finger and positioning it on top of the previous one. And you might need to at some point add some more glue gel. In fact, I'm going to add a little bit more into here. So I want to make sure that it sticks really, really well. And then that last one is going to lift up. And this is the great thing about the glue gel. I'm going to add a little bit more underneath here just to help that stick. And I'm just doing that with my pokey tool. So the pokey tool is really a great essential addition here. And then we do exactly the same again, nice big globule in the centre. And we're going to add in the final central pieces. So these are the tiny little ones. Now these won't shape quite as easily, but it's just because they're so small. But it's going to cover up all of those workings in the middle. And it's just about trial and error this and getting it perfect. But the great thing is you've got loads of time to work with that glue gel. So it doesn't matter if you don't get it perfect the first time. That's just starting to come together beautifully. And remember, gems are your friend. So if at any point you feel like you're not quite happy with how something's looking, you can always add a little gem on once everything's dried, just to cover over any workings. There we go, so 5 little ones in the centre there, 5 medium ones and 5 ones around the outside. And then once you're happy with how they're all sitting, we can then add our leaves in. So the leaves are just going to tuck behind. So I'm going to add some glue gel onto the back and then also onto the front. And then they just tuck in. So this is just going to lift up here and that will tuck underneath. And the same with this one. I'm going to put some on the front and some on the back. And just tuck that underneath there. And then remember, we've got our little spruces, and the same is going to happen with these. You're just going to shape them along the centre. And like I said earlier, these look lovely done in dark greens, or perhaps you want to do them with in some gold cardstock. That looks great as well. But we'll get plenty of glue onto the front and the back. And then they just position in place. So there's one, and then the little one as well. And then I'm going to add some up the side here. We've got a nice big one and a little one. And you just want it so that they start behind something else so that you can't see where they're coming from. And as long as you do that, they always work. So I'm just going to tuck that one under there like that. There we go. Then to add a finishing touch, as I do with all of these cards, especially the Christmas ones, I'm just going to come in with the Easy Crystal. And because we've got that lovely snowflake around the background, I'm just going to add some little highlights onto the centre parts of some of the little snowflakes we've got, and look what a fantastic difference that makes. And having the Easy Crystal means that you get precision application of those gems exactly where you want them in the centre parts of those snowflakes. There we go, I think that should do. And it just adds that lovely finishing touch. And this is what I was saying, that poinsettia is beautiful. It just takes a lovely bit of shaping. It's a fantastic crafty one to play with. But I think that's a lovely card.